When people talk about filmmaking gear and what they bring on a shoot with them, they usually focus on the big ticket items: camera, lenses, gimbals, and tripods. The terrifying reality is that all of that expensive equipment can sometimes be rendered useless, or at the very least not perform at 100% if you're lacking one tiny piece of the puzzle. Hi, I'm John from Wiley Visuals, and today we're talking about some underrated pieces of filmmaking gear that you absolutely must have in your kit. It doesn't matter what camera you shoot on or what type of productions you're working on, having these things with you at all times can be an absolute lifesaver. Number one is a multi-tool. I have a couple of these lying around in my bag so that there's always one within reach. They don't necessarily need to be super high quality, it just needs to have a variety of useful tools. You'll use these for all sorts of things, but possibly the most frequent is for tightening 1/4 inch tripod threads. So make sure that whatever tool you have has something on it that can do this. Other things you might frequently need are a blade or snippers for cutting gels to size or opening blister packaging, some pliers, and flat and Phillips head screwdrivers. You don't have to pay a fortune for a fancy Leatherman. I got this one for about $5 from a local hardware store, and this one is made by Small Rig specifically for camera operators, and it costs about $20. You might choose to have a full toolkit on set as well, but the great thing about these is you can keep them in your pocket all day to solve common problems, and it'll only be when you have a big issue that you need to get the big tools out. Plus, you'll be the most popular person on set at the end of the day when the beers start coming out and you're the only person with a bottle opener. Next up is your recording media or cards. Obviously you'll need these to record on at all, but it's important to spend time researching and testing the best options for your camera. Usually that means spending the extra cash to get the high quality brands such as Angelbird or SanDisk. This is not the place to try and save a few dollars if you want reliability. You never want to get stuck on a shoot and find that your camera stops working because your cards are not fast enough, or because a card failed and you don't have a spare. Also be wary of external recording options such as SSD drives. These are becoming more and more common as more cameras offer a USB-C output, but they can also cause problems because they're not as fast as a CFast card, for example, and the cables can add an extra point of failure if you bump something while recording. Also be sure that you always test your cards before using them on a shoot. So that means letting them record at high bit rates for extended periods to ensure that they're up to the task. You should never shoot with a brand new, untested card and expect it to work without fail. The next must-have item on this list is ND filters. If your camera doesn't have built-in filters, you're going to need either some screw-on ND filters or some rectangle filters that slip into a matte box. These will give you the freedom to choose your exposure settings while still getting a properly exposed image. Without these, you'll often be forced to shoot at slower apertures or faster shutter speeds, which will drastically change the way your image looks. I'm not saying it's not okay to shoot with fast shutter speeds or a deep depth of field, but it is important that you're able to make that decision creatively rather than being forced to do it because you don't have any ND filters. Next up is gaffer tape and zip ties. I'm bundling these two together because they go hand in hand when it comes to problem solving and makeshift solutions. There's so many things that you can do with these two items, like cable management, securing gear, marking and blocking scenes on the floor, and so on. Gaffer tape is great for securing cables, signs, gels, props, duvetine, wrapping the corners of polyboards, quick wardrobe fixes, making labels, or one of my favorites is taping over any equipment, buttons or objects, or even doors that you don't want people to use or move while you're filming. There's also different types and qualities of tape, from proper gaffer tape through to camera tape or cloth tape. It's important to have a few options for different situations. Depending on what you're trying to achieve, you might need one that's more or less sticky, or a tape that's more heat resistant, or something you can write on easily, as some different examples. Zip ties are great for cable management, sealing pelican cases when checking them in on flights, jerry-rigging receivers or transmitters to a camera rig, securing gear when shooting over a railing or when you're leaning out of a helicopter or vehicle. There's a saying that if you can't fix it with gaffer tape and zip ties, it can't be fixed. One time I was shooting a four-wheel drive TV show in the bush. We used zip ties and gaffer tape to repair a trailer which had split apart. We literally zip tied this trailer back together using logs, and we were able to keep on shooting in a situation that could have ended the entire production. And that's an example of why you should never be without these two items. One highly underrated filmmaking tool in general is lighting. Photography, and by extension videography, is literally painting with light. So you should always have tools at your disposal to add and modify light. One thing that I think everyone should have is some small LED lights that are battery powered by something like these NPF batteries. You can take these wherever you go and use them in all sorts of ways. Shooting indoors or at night, they might be your key light, but in other scenarios, you might just be able to throw them behind a product or somewhere in your background as an accent light. You can also use it as a flashlight when you're prepping gear or bumping in and out in the dark, or just so you can find all the other things on this list when they've fallen down the bottom of your camera bag. Of course, you should have bigger lights and modifiers as well, but for sheer convenience, I think something like this is really good to have just sitting in your bags and not taking up much space so that it's there when you suddenly need it. And finally, one more thing that I think every filmmaker or videographer needs to have is more batteries than you think you could possibly need. Whatever camera you're using, buy the biggest batteries available for it and buy lots of them. You should always be able to shoot for a full day minimum, powered on non-stop without having to recharge any batteries. And then you should have extras on top of that, because sometimes you'll want to swap batteries before they're even close to being dead. For example, just before you start a long interview. Be aware that batteries will fail, and sometimes you'll charge it up the night before and only find out on the day of the shoot that it's not holding a charge. You need to be prepared with plenty of backups when something like that happens. Depending on your camera, you might also want to look into getting an external battery system. V-Lock batteries or Sony NPF batteries are popular choices here because they have plenty of capacity and they're widely available with lots of mounting options. These batteries are commonly used for powering anything from lights to monitors, so you can use the same batteries for all of your gear, rather than having 3 or 4 different types of batteries that you have to manage everywhere you go. If you try and shoot on a regular basis without having these things in your kit, you're eventually going to run into a big problem. So make sure that when you're buying your gear or planning what to bring on a shoot, you factor in all those extra little things that will help make sure everything is working as it should and help you solve every problem that you might run into while filming. I hope this video helps you to avoid some simple mistakes, and if you've got your own recommendations for must-have items in your camera bag, then let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.